we're going to do a little bit of a background on what is OKRs and then talk about objectives. We're going to learn how to write good KRs. What is a KR? What's a valid KR? We're going to see what influences good OKRs. There's a whole lot of influences around it. How do you cascade an OKR, and then how do you operationalize your OKRs? OKRs started a long time ago, actually. They're not new. It was introduced by Andy Grove in Intel in the 80s. And John Doerr, a famous venture capitalist, made it famous by writing this book, Measure What Matters. He helped Andy Grove implement OKRs within Intel, and then he took it to Google, and he took it to Amazon, and he took it to Facebook, and almost all the great companies today use OKRs in some form or the other. And this book, if you haven't read it, it's a great book. And I'm going to play you a short little video right now of John Doerr himself, and he explains it much better than I do. So here we go.
I wanted to work in the computer industry and someday to start my own company. So I figured I'd apprentice myself to a venture capital firm, and I met lots of them. And guess what? They all turned me down. But one of them said, "We've just backed this company in Santa Clara by the name of Intel. You should check it out." As a summer intern, somehow I was admitted to a course on Intel's philosophies taught by resident professor and CEO Andy Grove. And he said, "You know, it almost doesn't matter what you know. What matters is how you execute." And so Andy developed a system for setting goals called OKRs that led to excellent execution. OKRs are objectives, that's the O, and key results, the KRs. And objectives are what it is you're trying to get accomplished. The key results are how we're going to get that done. OKRs are important because how you set goals makes all the difference. They're kind of a vaccine against fuzzy thinking and fuzzy execution. Measure What Matters is not a textbook. It's more of a handbook. It's a field guide, chock full of a dozen different colorful stories about entrepreneurs and big-time executives, for-profit organizations and nonprofits, all struggling to achieve excellence by doing a better job of setting their goals. This is a book for folks who care about teams, individual team contributors, and the leaders of those teams. I've written it with the hope that it'll be truly useful and allow your team to do more than anyone ever thought possible.
So that was a good short explanation. And with that, we'll dive straight into the content itself. So as you heard from him, the objectives are the direction, the main outcomes that you're looking for. They're high level. It's about where do you want to go, and what you have to do comes after that. So let's start with the high level outcomes. Put your hand up if you remember the balanced scorecard. It's been around for a long time, also since the 80s. The whole idea of balanced objectives was that whatever you focus on will improve at the cost of something else. Now, this is extremely important to remember. If you look at Wells Fargo and what happened there in the recent past, really bad things where they messed around with the customers and created, I think it was roughly about 5 or 10 million fake bank accounts and loan accounts against people's names. And this was done purely because of one thing. They did not balance their measures. So what they did and their objectives, they had one objective and one measure, and that was increase the number of customer accounts. That was it. And they boiled it down to such a low level where they said each person had to get almost 7 new accounts a day, every branch member. So this target worked out to something so ridiculous that people had to get more bank accounts opened than there were people in their town. And when they had only 30% of the market share. So guess what happened? Bad things happened. So they started opening bank accounts in people's dogs' names, in their cats' names, just fake names. They started forging signatures because otherwise they would be fired if they didn't hit their measures. So the golden rule to get any form of objectives right is to balance them, and balance them on 4 simple aspects. The first is revenue, and that includes having a revenue target but also having a profitability target. Internal processes, somebody calls that. So how efficient are your processes? Have a goal for objective for your people aspect, which covers innovation as well. And you must have something that measures customer satisfaction. Measuring the customer's experience, the customer satisfaction is important. So if you have an objective in each of these areas, you will ensure that the company doesn't go off rails by being too focused on just one area at the cost of something else. So if you look at key results by themselves, key results can be one to many for each objective. So each objective can have more than one key result. So have a look at these key results. My objective is I want to grow revenue. So here are 3 key results. I'm going to buy company XYZ. I'm going to be the greatest, and I'm going to implement system ABC. So what do you think of these key results? Are they good key results?
No, they're too fuzzy.
Yeah, they're absolutely not, because they're very fuzzy.
Not measurable.
That's right. So key results must be outcomes, not ambitions or activities. So for example, I see a lot of OKRs where the KRs are basically your initiative list. That is not a key result. That's an activity that will result in the key result, for sure. So key results should be outcomes. So let's say I have an activity, let's say implement Salesforce. It's a great one. We have to implement Salesforce. That's not a key result. What would the key result be if my initiative is implement Salesforce? Can somebody tell me?
Onboarding of a specific number of users.
That could be it. That could be a key result. Number of users onboarded on Salesforce. What else? What would be a business key result?
% of pipeline being managed in Salesforce.
Yeah, there you go. Percentage of sales pipeline managed via Salesforce, something like that. So it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be actionable, realistic, and time bound. So your KRs should be smart. We used to call these SMART goals. You can write them as a statement. So increase total revenue by 10% year on year. Is that a good KR? Is it smart? Is it specific? Yes, it's total revenue. Is it measurable? Yes, you can measure revenue. Is it actionable? Can you do something to increase total revenue? Yes. Is it realistic? Okay, 10% sounds realistic. And is it time bound? It's year on year, 10%. So it's a smart goal. It's a smart key result. Reduce customer attrition is a per annum is also a good one. You can write it in this form, or you can go one step further and tease it out. Now, teasing it out really helps. This is a much better format because it helps you think about actual targets. So here we are. So you've got the total revenue. You've got multiple measures for growing revenue, which is the objective. Total revenue is one of them. And then you specify what is your current baseline. What is it for period 1, period 2, period 3? This could be a year. You could have 2021, 22, 23, or you can have it by quarter. Some people do, the first period would be the next quarter, and this period number 2 would be the next year, or the current year, and the third one would be year plus 1. So whatever the period you want to choose, try and keep it consistent throughout your organization. It becomes very difficult if, let's say, Department 1 is doing the monthly and Department 2 is doing it quarterly and Department 3 is doing something else. So try and keep it well balanced. Is that all? Is that all you need to do as a leader to lead your company and provide clarity of purpose, clarity of where you're going? So OKRs are always wrapped in a couple of things. The first thing that they're wrapped in is the mission statement. The mission informs your OKRs. The mission is the purpose, the why your company exists. It speaks to the heart. It's not the mind issue. It's why do you wake up in the morning to come to work? That's what a mission statement is. And then the second half is the vision. So what is the longer term ambition for your company? So OKRs don't operate in a vacuum. They always operate within this environment of mission and vision. Now, if you do not have a clear vision or an ambition of where you're going, it becomes harder to write and manage OKRs, because are you in the right direction or not? The same thing, OKRs just become numbers if you don't have a mission. So a lot of companies go off the rails because they're just profit driven as opposed to purpose driven. It's very important to be purpose driven as well. Now, there's one more thing that influences OKRs more than anything else, and that is the S of strategy. OKRs are not strategy. That's very, very important to remember. If you have a very good OKR, it doesn't mean that your strategy is clear. And having a clear strategy informs the creation of great OKRs, right? The other thing that's unique is that your KRs actually change depending on your strategy. So if you say, I'm just going to sit down and write down my OKRs in a 1-hour workshop without talking about strategy, you will get it wrong because you're not clear about it. So this is a great example. So I want to grow revenue. Yeah. Now, if my strategy to grow revenue is M&A as opposed to organic growth, my key results would be different. It becomes very important for me to measure the number of acquisitions. You may want to measure organic revenue separate from acquisition revenue. So you must elaborate your strategy and then get your key results. So this is the template we've been using within WFS for OKRs. It helps cover the goal, the objective, per objective, just a few bullet points on what the strategy is. This is not a big strategy document or anything, just the key points of your strategy and then your measures based on the strategy and then fill it in. So that's how strategy informs the KRs. And now I come to the last bit, which is cascading OKRs. A lot of people say, oh, strategy is not for me and OKRs are not for me. I'm just a junior person in a squad or a department and I don't have to worry about it. But that's not true because OKRs cascade all the way around. So you go from vision and mission, objectives, key results, and of course you need a plan. And that's where your strategy fits in. Now, let's say at the WFS group level, you want to grow revenue. So now you take the key result of the level above and it becomes the objective of the level below. So if your key result from WFS level is grow revenue by 10%, 10% revenue growth becomes an objective for Mike Crosby. And then Mike has to figure out with his leadership team, what's the strategy for achieving that 10% growth? And based on that, what are the key results I'm going to get this year? And then make a plan. And now, guess what happens after that? Once Mike and his team have made their goals, it flows down to the functions. So underneath, you've got finance, HR, the others. So if the Land North America business unit has got a key result at this level, it becomes an objective at the level below because now the IT departments have to execute on the key results, to deliver the key results. Now the IT and the HR and the legal and the finance functions have to have a strategy of how to do that. Now, for example, an IT strategy could be, are we going to use contractors? Are we going to go offshore to keep the costs down and deliver more? Or are we going to just have a small, highly skilled team, Silicon Valley, and nowhere else? These are strategic choices. And you don't know if they're right till you test them and operationalize them. So we're going to come to how do you test your strategy. So that's what cascading OKRs mean, and it goes all the way down to the operational teams. You link the key results from the level above to your objectives, and then you work out a strategy at your level, how you're going to get your key results. You don't have to put every key result from the level above. Some key results may not apply to you. You only pull the ones that apply to you down. Down here, it gets very difficult because you get objectives and key results both coming in from the business unit as well as from the functions. So COO, finance, IT, you could get also land objectives hitting the teams on the ground. And that's where prioritization becomes difficult.
Phil, let me ask you a question. So the vision and the mission, as the KRs cascade down and become objectives and then another set of KRs, that vision and mission, how does that, do those relate? Or
yeah, normally the mission statement never changes. The mission is consistent for the company as a whole. Yeah. Now, you may have a slightly different mission for a different group, like Connect, for example, could have a different mission. So just to use some terminology, it may be to keep the lights on, or something like that, cost effectively. And the mission statement for the fuel business may be a different one. So that's okay. Or maybe aviation has a slightly different mission statement to land. That's also possible. But normally at the lower levels, you don't really get too much of a different mission statement. The vision, of course, can differ. You can have, the COO can have a different vision of how they're going as opposed to the operational level or the level above. But this is what alignment is all about. So at the end of the day, if they don't align top down and bottom up, you will be able to see it in the OKRs. Just one more slide before we get into a longer Q&A. OKRs are completely useless and an absolute waste of time if you don't operationalize them and use them as your management system. If you write down your OKRs, put them in a folder, and then just manage your business using some other methods, and then every quarter you update your OKRs, it's not going to be of any use. Don't waste your time. You have to use the method of defining it to actually measure it. And in John Doe's key words there, you know, how you execute is why OKRs came about. It all came about to actually improve your ability to execute your strategy as opposed to defining your strategy. Now, it does help you define your strategy through clarity. It removes all the fuzzy stuff, but the gold is here in this last slide. So the biggest trick here is to use your monthly, weekly management sessions with your teams to actually see whether these numbers are being hit or not. Now, what does that do? That actually tells you whether you've made the right strategic choice. Let me give you an example. Let us say at the topmost level, you decided that we're going for M&As. And you said, in order to hit our M&A growth target, we need 6 M&As in the next year. Now you are 4 months down the road and you've not even sealed one deal. You know, immediately your strategy is not working for whatever reason. Either there's not enough companies to buy, either you don't have the money, or whatever it is. You want signals coming back to you really fast whether this column, your strategy column, is good or not. And that only comes through by getting the feedback on these numbers. Now, at the lower level, these numbers are actually drivers of your business. They can be lead indicators or they can be lag indicators. So attrition rate, another great indicator. If you suddenly find your attrition rate going up, you go, whoa, within a week, you can jump on it. So operationalize your OKRs into your management system and use the same measures in your weekly, fortnightly, or monthly discussions with your leaders. And that, in summary, is OKRs. So you go through weekly, fortnightly, monthly, it doesn't matter how often. And that brings us back to the OKR poll. The first one, objectives should be
Balanced.
Balanced. Yeah, so the word I was looking for there is objectives must be balanced. The key results, the KRs, they are not, give me a couple of words here. We said KR should not be
strategy.
Could not be strategy. What else?
Activity.
They are not activities. Very important. They're not activities. They're definitely not strategy. To have good KRs, you should have a clear dash, dash, and dash.
Strategy.
Yeah, strategy is one of them. And the other two you raised, Russ, you asked me a question about it.
Yeah, the
Vision, mission.
Yeah, the vision and mission. So you must have a clear mission, vision, and strategy to have good OKRs. OKRs apply to the top level in a company, only to the top level. True or false?
False.
False.
So that one's pretty false. That brings us to the end of this session.